Welcome to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge, your front row seat to the boldest ideas and smartest strategies in the marketing game. Your host is Reed Hansen, Chief Growth Officer at MarketSurge.
Hello and welcome back to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge. Today's guest is Todd Steinacher, an award-winning agronomist and founder of Acre Crop and Land. Todd's journey began on his family farm in rural Illinois, leading him to earn top accolades. In fact, the 2021 International Certified Crop Advisor of the Year through dedication to agronomy excellence. After a global impact project in Zambia and a distinguished career at AgriGold and Growmark, Todd launched his agronomic coaching business to help farmers and advisors boost profitability while gaining flexibility as a dad. Today, we'll dig into how he became a coach and what it takes to run a business in agronomics, blending science, service, and systems. Welcome, Todd.
Yeah, afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, Todd, this podcast, I've had a lot of guests in the digital marketing and a lot of industries that do business primarily in the city, or very businesses that have a lot of face-to-face components. And so I was really fascinated when we connected. I wanted to learn more. Can you tell us a little bit about what an agronomist does and how you got into this field?
Absolutely. So most of the time when I talk to somebody and they ask me what I do, I say I'm an agronomist. The first question is like, what? Kind of have the deer in the headlight look. And so if you think of, a biologist as somebody who studies biology, a chemist is somebody who studies chemistry. Agronomy overall is the plants science, soils, and the fertility that's on the production agriculture side. So an agronomist is somebody who basically studies that. And so I kind of tell people I get to play, in the science world, I get to play in the business world because I kind of sit everywhere that the farmer does. So it's our responsibility to understand soil fertility. It's our job to understand the chemistry in the soils, water, nutrient management, the genetics that we're planting, across really all crops. I primarily focus in on corn, bean, and wheat, but there's a whole host of crops around the world that all agronomists kind of play with. Now, I would consider myself more of I'll call it a broad agronomist, very specifically looking from a business and high yield standpoint, because there can be some that are very focused on soil fertility. There can be some that are very focused on weed management, crop protection. So really just, agronomy and agronomist has a very overarching arching umbrella. Now, so I've I always knew I wanted to be an agronomist. I knew there wasn't an opportunity to go home and farm, and I said, "What's the next best option that I can still stay engaged in agriculture?" And it's to be an agronomist. And so, literally, from the time I started my freshman year of college, and I'll be honest, I didn't think I could excel in college, but actually I did, because I really wasn't that good in high school academics. But once I started in the college level, it just clicked. The science clicked with me, the math, all the business classes, and it was just amazing. And so I really can't see myself doing anything else. I love what I do, and I always have, I call them goofy projects. I'm always trying to understand something in the soil or with the plants, or doing something. And people are always like, Todd, you're always working. I'm like, yeah, but it's fun. I'm like, I don't go golfing. I don't go fishing. I don't have all these other hobbies. Me nerding out on corn and beans and soil is my hobby. So again, I get to do what I love every day.
That's awesome. And, I think we'd all wish to be so fortunate that we get to do what we love and get paid doing it. That's really cool. So you touched on one thing, just in your comment, but previously when we talked earlier, you cover a lot of the business aspects of agronomics, when you are working with the farms that you work with. Tell us what those kinds of projects look like when you're working with the business side of agronomics.
Yeah. So, over the last 20 years, it's kind of hard to believe it's been 20 years, but, I've seen a lot of times good agronomy decisions don't get implemented because of the financing and the profitability on that acre. And so if we're not managing the business side, buying our inputs right, making sure we're minimizing our risk and all these other pieces and growing our yields, it's not going to allow for opportunities to go purchase these things and make good decisions. So, say for an example, we put proposals together on nitrogen management programs, or to go apply a fungicide. I love spreadsheets. We could nerd out in spreadsheets all day long, putting business proposals together, and it's basically a roadmap for a grower, because a grower's got a lot on their plate. They're wearing the hat of the agronomist, the chemist, the financing, the legalities, the liabilities from the insurance standpoint, selling their grain. A lot of times, folks just want, give me a plan, give me a business plan that makes sense financially, and I'll follow it. And so that's where I gravitate towards understanding that, because I got a lot less objections. So early on in my career, when I was in agronomy, I was still in sales. So if I could put a proposal together for a grower to understand what their fertility costs are going to be, what their seed costs are going to be, what it costs them to prepay versus waiting till in season, and just help them understand where they can make more bushels. And so, at the end of the day, you have your total cost of production, and if you divide it by how many bushels you get, that's really what you have to sell your grain for to break even. In a lot of cases, a lot of growers don't know what that value is. And so I was able to come out of the gate and share that with a lot of growers. Hey, here's your plan based off your average production. This is really where you need to start selling your grain. So, if it's north of that, let's start planning, because you can be profitable. But then take this to your crop advisor on the grain side, grain advisor, and start letting them know this is really the ballpark where we need to be playing at. So it's really a team effort.
That's awesome. So, would you say most growers employ an agronomist like yourself on a regular basis, or is it more of like a kind of a when they have a custom question? Um, how does
Well,
that typically work?
yeah, so it really depends. There's some very progressive and aggressive farming operations across the country that just have an agronomist on staff.
Mm,
There's going to be I'll call it the most mass of growers across the country, very specifically in Illinois, where I cover. Most seed companies, retailers, they have their own agronomist, and basically it's, hey, as long as you're doing business with us, you get access to our agronomist. So that's where the agronomist usually is on board to help test products, go out and see things, visit with growers, handle the objections, handle challenges. But uh, they it allows medium and small size growers to have access to that agronomist, but not have them on staff. Hey, I'm already buying
mm.
my crop protection, my nutrient management, my seed from the co-op or such and such company. Well, then in turn, I get some access to this particular agronomist. So now, from like my standpoint, since I don't sell any of those things,
Mhm.
I and I'm not knocking the agronomists that work for those companies, but at the end of the day, I don't. The grower pays my bills. When I'm out consulting with them, giving them advice, it's not because I'm getting. A lot of folks in ag get paid by acres, tons, and gallons, and I'm not selling that. So it allows me to be very open-minded and can just really give my opinion on what is going to be best for that grower. Because in my mind, it's not like I have a fiduciary responsibility to these growers, but really, I in my gut and my soul, I do, because I want them to be successful. Because my grandfather farmed. I really hoped he had a very strong advisor that helped him over the years. And so I just want to be that champion, and that's coaching. My job is to coach folks and to make them be successful.
As you mentioned, the agronomists that work for the seed and grain companies reminds me of kind of the equivalent in my world. Um, Periodically, the Facebook ads and the Google ads, employees will reach out and they'll say, "Hey, we could do a free consult call," and ultimately the solution to every problem of your ads performance is like, "Oh, why don't you try raising your daily budget a little bit?" And it's like, yeah, okay, all right. I'll just remind myself who you work for, and there's some advantage in having an independent agronomists looking
Right.
at
Well, so several years ago, fungicides for health, plant health came very popular in corn. And I can remember having this conversation with the grower, and I was kind of, early in career, and the grower's like, Todd, every time I spray this, the manufacturer made money, the transportation company that got it to your company makes money. I'm sure you're making money off of it, but how often do I make money? And so I can still remember that conversation. That was 19, 20 years ago. Um, that grower has since passed away, but that conversation has stuck with me my whole career. And that's where I really try to help folks understand, hey, let's test products. Let's see where they work, where they don't. So we can make these decisions instead of either saying, nope, we're going to opt out and not do it and then get hurt financially from lack of yield or standability issues at harvest, or we have to spread across all of our acres and we just increase our cost of production, and maybe it only worked 80% of the time. So how can we find a nice balance in there? And so really that's where I've always come from an agronomist standpoint. I can't sit here today and tell you, yes, this will or will not work X% of the time, but I want to partner with you to test it. If you're willing to go put it out there, split fields, across a lot of acres. I will be there to partner with you to collect the data, evaluate it. I do what I call audits. Let's go to the field, let's audit fields, let's figure out where yield was gained and lost. And then I can let you know, did we see, because a lot of times you can get, I call it biological yield,
okay.
greener plant, taller plant, bigger leaf, bigger roots. Did that equate to yield? Sometimes it does or doesn't. And then was it economical yield? And so everybody wants the profitable economical yield, but it might have just been a factor of the year. But if for some reason, hey, I did see a biological response, but it might have been the season. Okay, now we know how to go tweak it. So a lot of times what we're doing, it's trial and error, and that's where I kind of reference, farming is kind of the old school of like NASCAR. He who wins is who tweaked the car the best, and try to figure something out and got ahead of somebody because they, rigged something up and it worked. And that's really what production ag is. It's trying to get ahead and finding what works. But again, if the folks in the countryside are you know, are there just to sell stuff, not there to actually be a true partner with the grower. You can go broke spending tons of money because every company's out there says, well, buy my stuff. It'll increase 5 bushels. Well, growers jokingly say, well, hey, if I just do that 50 times across all these items, well, I got high yields now, but then you can't afford it. So it's kind of funny, everybody's wanting to, grow to buy something but nobody wants to test stuff. It's, oh, don't split your field, just do the whole field.
Mm.
Well, that's not a wise decision. It's not wise business unless you're sold on it. We know nitrogen, corn plant needs nitrogen. Yeah, let's split, let's put it across the whole field. Now we might adjust our rates and see what works best, or adjust something else within it to see if we can improve it. But we're already sold on nitrogen. It's an essential nutrient. We know the corn plant needs it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. That's a good example. Do you, now let's zoom out a little bit. And in addition to working as an agronomist, you also coach other agronomists. Now, what does that look like? What are those services like, and what kinds of education do agronomists need on a regular basis?
Well, so have you ever heard the expression "we're building the ship as we're floating"? That's exactly what we're doing. I had the vision of what I wanted. I had some very good um, coaches, leaders that I looked up to in my career, and they taught me a lot about how to be an agronomist, how to present, how to think logically. And I'll be honest, I feel like our industry has lost a lot of that.
Hmm.
Folks coming out of college, I don't think they're prepared to handle the needs of growers moving forward. And there's a lot of risk associated with these companies based off the decision a lot of these sales agronomists are making. So one, becoming a CCA, certified crop advisor, and I've been a CCA for many years. You referenced early on, I was the 2021 International CCA, and I was also the 2020 Illinois CCA of the year. And so Illinois has actually only had three folks go on to become international CCA of the year. So I feel very honored to be in that small club. But within that, yes, there's a big test involved. A CPA has to go take a test. A lawyer has to go take a test. A doctor has to go take a test to get their board certification. And really, across ag, there is no, you know, um, state mandate, federal mandate. It's self-serviced. It's, hey, we're going to go take this exam. I think it's been about 30 years since the CCA program started, but you have to have so many continuing eds in soil and water, nutrient management, integrated pest management, crop development, and you got to have, I think, like 5 in each category. Then you can do professional development, and so that helps. And that's every 2 years. Sorry, 40 CEUs, but that's designed to, yes, let's go take the test. We know that, hey, you understand basic agronomics that most growers are going to face. Now we want you to stay sharp. And so we want to make sure you're going to these meetings, you're going to these educationals to learn the newest and greatest, and you're applying that back with our customers that we're servicing. So what I built in with this, one, I have classes that sits with the junior college that folks can go and prepare themselves to take that exam. It's about 15 hours of content, it's broken down to where it's digestible, but it's also not taught from a PhD standpoint. It's taught from Todd Steinacher, boots on the ground for the last 20 years. And let's sift through I'll call it some of the BS that you might not want to hear about, but it's the stuff that's going to impact not only you to understand and take this test, but how to be a great agronomist at the end of the day. Because I could care less if somebody just went and took the test, checked the box, passed it, but they weren't a good agronomist after that. I've got one opportunity to try to influence these folks. So I got to take my time where I can. So that's primary one. I want to help folks become CCAs, understand the content, so when they're out working with growers, they're making good advice to put that grower and that land first and foremost. Number two, it's having the CEUs. So I've created courses that I have. I'll call I follow the crop, from fall till fall, and I have short videos lined up because each season's going to be different, and so these videos are all designed how they interact with those 5 categories: nutrient management, crop development, and it's applied to how a salesman or agronomist can learn. Oh, that's how that's impacting us right now based off this season. So the amount of the heat we've gotten, the amount of rainfall we've gotten, the temperatures, and all these other factors that play into it. So I'm metering this information throughout the year to them as a coach to say, hey, this is what our problem is. This is why, and this is how you interact with it. These are the questions you need to be asking your growers. A lot of times it's what do I have a conversation with the grower? Because a lot of times you don't want to go out and sell them something. It's the wrong time of year to be selling stuff. So, and as long as we're watching the videos, we're taking the quizzes, I'm able to offer those continuing eds to those CCAs. Now, they can still go to meetings anywhere else and get them, but a lot of times, you know what? They're boring. They're not topics that you could apply. You have to drive 3 or 4 hours, stay overnight, a lot of cost. And from a sales manager standpoint, hey, I need my people out in the field. And so if they're at a conference for 3 or 4 days, what value is that? So the systems I have set up is it's metered out to these guys and gals throughout the year. And so it's coming right to them. They don't have to log in. I try to take all these handcuffs off. That's usually a pain in the butt for me.
Mhm.
But how can we streamline this thing and get it right to them? So with that, they have those videos. I interview other industry professionals, kind of like we're doing right now, on topics that are of interest to them. Instead of me coming up with the core topics, core information, let's bring some of that in. I'm trying to start getting university grad students.
Mm.
And so how can we help them be successful once they get into industry? Hey, come practice with me. Come do just like this right here. I'm not saying put it into a lecture form, but let's just have a conversation of your project. Educate me. I
Mhm.
still need to be educated and learn, so I can help recommend things. So it's all about becoming certified and keeping our skills very, very sharp. And so I always kind of go back to a quote I always liked from Abraham Lincoln. If you have 2 hours to chop down a tree with an axe, spend the first hour sharpening the blade. And so the folks that I tend to work with largely are the ones either right out of college to year 5. So how can I have a strong impact there? Don't get me wrong, I still work with the folks that have been longer in career. They want some tweaking, but man, if we don't help those folks early in career, to where they have a good, successful year one, year two, they're going to get out. They're going to go do something else. They're not going to be successful, and they're going to get burnt out, and they're going to get discouraged. They're going to get bad recommendations. So again, how can we help do that? And it's just it's part of leadership.
Yeah.
Leadership within my industry. At some point we all got to step up, and so I've always tried to take folks under my wings. I go to junior colleges, I go to high schools, I go to FFA contests, and always try to intertwine nutrient management, the things that we're doing here, in every conversation I do, to have an education opportunity, visit with folks to help them, because one, they make reach. I've had folks reach out to me 5 years down the road and say, "Hey, Steinacher, I remember you did this, and this at a meeting. Can you re-explain it to me?"
Mm.
Absolutely. But then there's a large group of people I'll never see again. But if I can have a positive impact on them, hopefully they went out in the industry and did something great.
Um, just at a high level, would you say that in your field, you need to do a little bit of like recruiting work, like um, as opposed to like, are there enough agronomists out there for example? Like,
So there's a lot of agronomy majors,
okay.
ag business majors. Um, there's probably going to be a time where good sales agronomists are deficient.
Mm.
Just because cycling out, folks retiring, and companies are always hiring agronomists, and they down. I'll be honest. Usually, the first role that gets cut is the agronomist, just
Oh,
because
interesting. Okay.
we're not directly involved in sales, but yet we protect a lot of sales. So companies that retain their agronomists, I tend to have a lot of respect for those companies, and you can kind of see that they're the ones that have very good long-term stable
Mm.
success. But the ones that are always moving the agronomist around, they're the ones that go up and down, and have some challenges to be successful. I think there's always going to be demand for a good agronomist. There's folks going into the sciences, so there's a good supply. It's just pulling those ones out, and giving just a little extra attention. Hey, come out of the sales world, come on this side a little bit. Let's polish you a little bit from an agronomist standpoint. I think you'll be very successful. Our industry does a very good job of recruiting folks through FFA, 4-H, and grade school to high school, get them into the junior colleges. Junior colleges are very agronomically focused. I've been working with them for years, trying to get them to incorporate the CCA exam into their program. So when they come out of junior college, they've already got their CCA. They're ready to go to work, and they're more employable. So right now, I think we have a lot of folks in the pipeline. It's just getting them some experiences and getting them up and going. So from my standpoint, I don't really have to go recruit.
Okay.
The industry does a very good job of it. Now I have to recruit clients to come want to work with me.
Mhm.
My goal is going into next year. I want 26 people, because I
Okay.
want to be able to have fewer number of people, but have more impactful conversations with them. And to where it is, yes, we have digital, but yet we're going to have these one-on-one conversations, and we can work through the challenges. Because I've learned a lot of times, these guys and gals, they're scared to go tell their boss they're having problems and challenges, and they just kind of wait till it kind of all comes together. But I've always found the agronomist is kind of the guidance counselor, or grandma with cookies, and they come and want to have a conversation with, they've always spilled the beans to me. And I've always been able to help coach salesmen over the years. I've never been in a situation where I've been a sales manager, or had direct reports to me, but I've helped coach a lot of folks and train them to be successful and kind of work through a lot of these challenges. So yeah, there is a need for good agronomy folks in the future, and there always will be.
Now, as you've been talking, I've been taking some mental notes of some universal truths that you've mentioned that would apply to just about any business. And if you will, I just want to take a moment and highlight a
Yeah.
few key points you mentioned. One was having a deep expertise in your subject area and the value that that brings. And you've mentioned the certification that you can get. Some industries have that, some don't, but to have the level of expertise such that you could pass a certification, I think is pretty critical. And then two, you mentioned, kind of a consultative approach. Now, a lot of service businesses, I have a lot of clients in the service businesses, do need to establish some credibility and connection and trust with a client before they are selected. And I love how you mentioned that. So, say you were talking to a potential agronomist, and say like, here, give me a project and let's work through it together. And that's like exactly the kind of exercise that just about any service professional could benefit from that approach. And I think overall, like the way you describe it is making your teaching and coaching content really engaging. Like in it, it's a lot of deep science and a lot of and maybe when taught by certain academics that are a little bit dry in approach, just like could really push people away. So, being really engaging, I think is super important. But also maybe like even just the principle of like, do you have a mentor? Do you have a coach? And like you should always be learning. And it sounds like that, like all these things you embody in your practice. But yeah, I think you've covered a lot of things that we can take away. And I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but I mean, I think you've covered a lot of really good ground.
On the mentor one. So a year ago is when I had the fork in the road to go on my own. I was part of North America layoff with a particular company, and it was either jump back in the industry where it's kind of chaotic, or go on my own that I wanted to do anyway to allow me to have more time spent with my family and didn't have to travel as much. And so it was it was a weird time, and I actually reached back out to one of my old employers, my boss's boss. He was the GM of the company. Liked him. He had a very methodical way of life. He always shared like military books with us and strategies and all these other type deals. So I reached out to him, and I told him, I said, this is what I'm thinking I want to do. He's like, Todd, before we can talk, you need to read this particular book. And I'll be honest, I hate reading. It is not my favorite thing to do. So when my wife seen me reading this book for a week, she's like, "What are you doing? You never read." I'm like, I can't go talk to this guy and launch Acre until I read this book and can go talk to this guy. And it was basically I think it was called burn the bridge or burn the boat or burn the boat,
Mhm.
to where you don't look back, just keep
Right.
going, and,
Right.
and a lot of fundamentals from it. But so I still reached back out to that gentleman who's since retired, and so you meet these people in life that can help you and coach you. So I've always seen huge value in building relationships, not only with customers but employees, or even somebody that I have nothing to gain from them in life. I still want to have those good relationships, and so just having somebody you can reach out to and bounce things off of. So I have folks across the industry from other seed brands, other industries, and we all communicate back and forth. And so a lot of times folks reach out to me and says, "Hey, Steinacher, what do you think about this particular issue in nitrogen right now?" And we have the conversation, and then I call certain people on those particular things. So always staying engaged, because we can read an article, we can go hear a publication, hear something on TV, but maybe sometimes that's what that they want us to know, not necessarily what we need to know. So
Right.
then you have all these people across your industries, and then you can really just go have a conversation. Hey, I seen this. This is coming. Tell me what I really need to know about this. And so it's just so impactful having those relationships through your career.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And I think I've been the beneficiary of you connecting with somebody that doesn't necessarily offer value, but I get a lot of value out of hearing from your journey, and I'm so glad that you were willing to come on the podcast. Let me ask you one closing question. You mentioned the virtue of sharpening your axe, and the importance of like sharpen that axe, and it'll make the chopping job much faster. What's your go-to to sharpen your own axe, whether it's personally or professionally? Do you have do you have other mentors, or do you have something you go to keep sharp?
So for the most part, I'll be honest, I use YouTube a lot.
Mm,
I I go there and research topics that I want to learn more about, a subset specific piece of a topic. And a lot of times when you can go do that, it takes out all the sales and marketing, because you can literally find other agronomists that I can learn from, or a PhD that made a little short video on a particular topic. So I want to go learn and kind of sharpen myself there. But uh, I'll be honest, I went and grabbed another certification here recently in another field, kind of, and just so I can kind of land management. And so just so one, I can start networking with this whole other group, but they also offer all their hosts of CEUs. How can I start learning these other pieces, and maybe what I learned there can be applied to what I do every day. And so I'm always trying to stay sharp. To be quite honest, I'm looking at going and completing my doctorate at this point, and I found some online programs, and so if you're going to be keep learning, I can use those educations for my CEUs. So I'm double dipping it. I'm learning to share that back with growers. Shoot, might as well just take a class and have another degree at the end of the day. And not that I'm trying to promote degrees or elitist or anything like that, but if I come this far in my journey, I might as well finish it off.
well, that's awesome, Todd. Um, I mean, I think you really do embody a lot of the things you talk about. Your pursuit of learning and continuously developing new skills, which I think is something we all should be doing. So, Todd, I really appreciate you joining me today. And if people are interested in your services or learning more or just want to network, what's the best place for them to find you?
So I would direct them to my website, acre being ACHER matters.com. And that's going to be the easiest way to send me a message or get in contact with me for any follow-ups.
Awesome. Well, I'll include that in the show notes, and look forward to publishing this. And hopefully, we can stay in touch, Todd.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Want to stay ahead of what's actually working in marketing right now? Head over to MarketSurge.io and see how we're helping businesses grow smarter, faster, and louder. That's MarketSurge.io, because your next breakthrough shouldn't be a guess.